Don here in Florida, and today we're going to do something maybe just a little bit dangerous. We're doing some head work for a guy that owns a old Harley Panhead. He brought this thing in, just the rear jug and cylinder head, and said, yeah, hey, this is blowing oil out the intake, and you know, it's getting hot and blah blah blah. And so I took a look at it, and this is what it looks like now that it's been cleaned up and we've vapor blasted this. Let me put a picture of what it looked like just when it came out of the tank. This is after sitting for a weekend and scrubbing it down. This head was just covered in carbon. It was just baked right on. It was horrible. The piston as well was just losing aluminum. It was scuffed to heck. It was in horrible shape. The top was just crusted over with carbon, and the valves, especially the exhaust valve, were just mashed with oil and carbon. It was a bad scene. And the guy was giving me all kinds of excuses about it, and I looked at it and thought for about 2 seconds, and I said, buddy, you got a carburation problem here. And he didn't believe me, and I had to explain it to him. The cylinder walls and the piston were all scuffed to heck as if they'd been running dry. And he'd been saying, oh, well, the bike runs rich. Well, that's just the problem right there. When you run your bike rich, and especially to the extreme of rich, you get what's called cylinder wash, where you're getting too much gasoline in with the air mixture. So you're not at that stoichiometric ratio at about 14.7 to 1. So basically you have raw gasoline washing down the inside of the cylinder bore here, and because you're washing all the off that cylinder wall, there's no lubrication for the piston, so the piston's basically just rubbing hard on the cylinder wall and just eating itself up. On top of that, as it's eating itself up and getting hot, you've got blow-by coming past, bringing up oil into the combustion chamber. That's getting all over the valves. Just starts blowing all over heck. It's blowing up through the valve guides, and all kinds of nasty things are happening. It's basically just all that oil is just going up there, baking itself on, and turning into carbon deposits. So he didn't believe me. After the explanation, it was like, oh yeah, by the way, yeah, I had this other guy do the carburetor, and you know how the story goes. It's a mess. And so anyway, I asked him to bring in the other jug and head. He didn't want to. He wants to do all this on the cheap. Okay. Normally I would send all this stuff out and just have an engine shop do this for me, but I've done enough of these over the years. Literally I've done thousands of these, but I sold off all my valve grinding equipment. I had a nice Sioux 680 machine. It was beautiful for doing valves, and I had the head equipment and all that. He wanted it all done cheap. I know there was no way we could get it done cheap downtown. So what I did was I bought one of these Sioux type stone holders with a set of stones, and this is from India, and it comes with a little driver here, because the normal Sioux machine is a offset head like this that you put on and grind with, but you can use a power drill with this. So you insert that in there, it drives the Sioux stone driver. You get a set of guides like this here. The guide sits down inside that, and down inside the head like this. So you drop that in, put your stone on here, drop this down over the guide with the stone on there, and then with your drill you just spin it and grind out the seats. When I say grind, this is a momentary process. It doesn't take long to set these seats, and we have to do the seats. I don't know if you can see in here, these seats here, there are like micro chasms all the way across. This was, especially on the exhaust side, this was burning out. So even if we just tried to lap it, it's probably not going to get past that and seal well. So we're going to put a slight grind on there, and then we'll lap it back in and see what happens. Of course, the valves themselves, we're going to have to cut those as well. I don't know if this is coming out on camera, but see how it's all discolored around here? Those are micro craters, and that happens from the burning. I wanted to replace the valves, but he said, oh no, the guy just put new valves in it, and I can see that it probably was, because you have a fairly good space right here across here. If that was coming up to a razor edge, then yeah, you'd have to replace them. But obviously he's right. The guy did put valves in that was doing this before, so we'll live with those valves. Anyway, so we're gonna go ahead and touch up the seats here. We're going to grind the valves, but before we get started on that, this setup, like I said, that came from India, it came with a bunch of different stones. I thought the large size stone was going to work for us, but as the seat is actually inset fairly deeply there, I line these up, and actually the next size stone down, I think that's like a 175. So yeah, 175. By the way, Shars, your calipers suck. I'm always about 50 thousandths off with these, depending on how far out they go. I'm gonna throw these away. I've been using the mic almost constantly lately because of those things. All right, so we're gonna cut a new angle on these. This stone here, the larger one, that's already cut at a 45, and not a very good 45. Obviously, if you look in there, you can see they didn't cut it all the way down. This one was cut at a 30, and it has to be at a 45. So we're going to go over on the lathe here and go ahead and we're just going to touch up this 45 to make sure we're sitting good and proper before we hit the stone we're going to use. And then we'll go ahead and do the head. So let's do that right now. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and chuck this up here. We don't have to get too crazy on it. It doesn't take a lot to cut a stone. And I've already got a diamond cutter set up in this AXA, so we're going to set this up here, set it here, lock it in, and we're going to set the tool post off. And this is nice, Craftsman, because our 0 is right here on this tool post, so we can bring our mark, that's our 0 right there, right around to 45 degrees. That's 40, 45 right there, and that should set our tool right at a 45 degree angle. So let me tighten that up. Okay, everything's tight. Yep. So let's just take a quick look across there, make sure that we're kind of following that 45. And it does look like it's following it. I don't know how accurate they are with this in India, so let's go ahead and give it a try here. Whoa, look at the concentricity of that thing. Not very cool. I'm going to lock the bed here. Yeah, see, I was way off on that when I started, and it's already hitting it. I'm glad I made this quick bed lock here. Bring it back just a little bit. Yeah, that's that edge that was so rough right there. Okay, so at least I know they'll cut without breaking up, so I'm not going to go any more on that. I'm going to just double check on the protractor that I have a good 45 on that. Okay, that was a good 45. I'm going to go ahead and put a washer behind this one because I did some pre-checks on this, and I found that the depth of that valve seat on the intake side is really deep, and she's just not quite touching. So again, you can see there's quite a difference between a 30 and a 45 here. So see here. Okay, so let's go ahead and give this a shot. Just starting to touch it. The concentricity of this one looks just a little bit better, which I'm happy about. I want a nice smooth edge across there. I want that 30 all gone. So I think I just hit it right there. Yep, that was it. Okay, so I'm not gonna take this stone back off of here. Try to get this in the camera here. Okay, so the stone came out pretty darn good. I was actually relieved, and she is at a real nice 45. I've checked her down against the face of the seat here, got the guide inserted. I'm gonna put just a little bit of lubricant on that guide. You don't want to get too much. There we go. And then we'll insert the tool down in. Make sure it's seating down in there nicely. And then give it a little spin here. I'm gonna go in fast motion here. Yeah, it's already starting to cut. You don't want to go too quick. You want to go real slow with these. You don't want to take out too much material. That did it right there. We should be able to lap that right in now. So the intake isn't nearly as bad. The exhaust, of course, took the brunt of the beating on this thing, I guess. Now it's sitting a little low there. I'm wondering if I need to go to a bigger stone. Okay, so let's see if that modification helped out. I've got it concentric to the shaft now, and I turned it down the diameter so it would fit past the aluminum here. Notice when I was cutting that, I was always cutting from this side. That's because it's chipped out right there. That's how it came. I didn't want to start a cut in this direction. I didn't want that chipping out and blowing away half the stone. If I'm cutting from this direction, chances are that if it's going to blow out, it's just going to be more chips off that side. So I just want to save the stone to be able to use. So what do I do with my stuff? That looks good. See where that valve sits now. I think that valve's gonna be happy right there. Okay, took a little bit of Prussian blue. We're gonna put it on this valve face. I'm gonna drop it down in there. And just move it to a couple of spots here. I'm not gonna twist it back and forth. I still have to ream that. And I just wanna see where this is seating. So that's just a little tiny dab on there. So let's take a look at that. Yeah, here we go. So you can see that the Prussian blue is marking right in that area where we ground. So let's do the other one. And yeah, that sits up quite a bit higher. So we're gonna, let's see what it looks like on the valve. Yeah, it's mashing it out towards the top edge. So luckily this is the intake valve. Otherwise I'd say that that seat had been cut too open. But then again, see what happens when we cut the valve. Yeah, that did it right there. That's nice and shiny, clean. Still got a real nice edge right there. Coming around the back side here, you can see that real nice and clean now. Right in that really bad spot too. It was right there. Still got a nice edge going across there. We don't want that coming up like a knife edge, or we've got problems. Okay, this exhaust valve was massively sticking up. And I've blown this all out, and what we're going to do is just run a reamer down through here to see if we can get this to unstick. And I'm not surprised it's like this with all the overheating cycles it's been through. There's a lot of carbon in there. When we started, we still, even with vapor blasting, we still couldn't get it all out from under here. So I don't know if you can see that. And got a little bit of valve grinding compound here. I'm gonna take a dab of this. Whoa, getting crazy there. Must be the heat. Makes things move a little bit quicker, I guess, except people. That's way too much. Okay, let's see what that hat does. Oh yeah, see that? Right in the middle, right where we want it. Same thing on the seat, hitting right in the middle. Yep, right where we want it. If you look down in here again, also right in the middle of where we ground. So again, that's just right. Don't want to leave none of that grinding compound down in there. Hell. Okay, so guess we can go ahead and put the valves in now. It has to line up with that oil hole. Okay, so there's the head, ready to rock and roll. New valves in it, springs, everything's good to go except that. So next up is the piston. We'll do that in a few minutes. Okay, so he wants the rings put on his piston for him, and we've already cleaned up that piston on the vapor blaster, so it's about as good as it's going to get. There's no high spots or anything on it. All the bad chunked up aluminum that was piling up on there is gone now, and I mic'd it out, and it mics within spec, so he's going to reuse that piston. The bore, on the other hand, although we did clean it up, there's still quite a bit of scarring down in there, or scoring, and we need to get that cleaned up. We need to know that these rings will be able to seat into that bore again. So I'm going to go ahead and clean it up with a dingleberry hone. And when I went to diesel school, that's what we call them, dingleberry hones. I don't know another name for them. I'm sure there probably is, but that's what it is to me. And once I get that cleaned up with a dingleberry hone, if it looks good, I'm going to take this concentricity tester here, and this is basically just a micrometer that calculates off 3 points, 1, 2, and 3. It slides up and down the bore. You can turn it around this way. It makes sure that everything's round and square going up and down like this. So get a little WD-40, and that's just to carry the oil, because I don't have proper honing oil here. We'll use a little bit of this here. Get that all up in the bore nice. And put a little bit on the hone itself. Just got some on my drill bits over there, which probably need them. So slow it down a little bit. A little dry still. Take a look in here. Look at that. See all that? See how rough it is? See how you get those lines going straight up and down like that? That was that piston, and the rings just seasoned in there with carbon. It was running dry, real dry. Discoloration at the bottom. I don't know if you can see that. All that oil was basically, that should have been up on here, was being flushed away by the excess of gasoline going into that engine. That's why I say cylinder wash is what caused that. I guess it's starting to come out a little bit. Okay, I made those last couple passes down on the floor, and as you can see now, it's pretty well cleared up. So let's go ahead and clean that out real quick. Get it nice and clean in there, or we stick a tool in there. Here, and insert it. And this is kind of hard to do with the camera in hand, okay? But what we're looking for is a difference, top to bottom. And there is a slight difference, but it's not a lot. If we go all the way to the bottom, it starts tapering out a little bit, but that's okay. But right in here, there's a thousandths or so. Let's turn it this way. And this way, it's right here. Okay. And it does show a little difference between here, because we're at, make sure it's seated in there. We're at 16, 17 and a half thousandths. And here, we're at 16 and a half thousandths. So there's about a thousandths difference in concentricity here on this bore. I know that's going to be all right for the guy. He just, like I said, he just had this bored, so we're going to leave that alone. Okay, so this number 2, there's the dot right there, will go up. And then this one here, there's no indicator. And on Hastings rings, there's no indicator. Doesn't matter which way they go. So measure my width here. Yep. And that about covers it. And then, of course, these gaps are supposed to be, it says 120 out, but that's on a 3-ring setup, and this technically really isn't a 3-ring setup, it's a 2-ring, so we're going to put them 180 out gap here and here. So, and then those will squeeze in and go right down, that bore will go right down over it, and she'll be done. Okay, so I guess that just about wraps it up. Obviously we can do a valve job with a cheap Indian grinding stone, Sioux style, and our lathe. One thing that probably a number of you caught if you've done this before is I didn't do the stems. The reason being, of course, was those valves were actually new to begin with, and the ends of the stems look really good. Any 1/1000ths of clearance that I may have added to the top side is easily taken out in the pushrod tubes when this is adjusted. So panhead, you can do it on the lathe and with some cheap stones. Piston should be flying up and down inside that bore just about any time from now. We got him some really nice head gaskets for this, so hopefully he'll be happy with the work. The one thing I did pick out when I was working on this was that this tube, this lube tube right here, it's supposed to guide oil that comes out of here down onto this point. Somebody at some point had brazed this back here and then got brazing material down in there, tried to drill up through there and broke a drill bit off on there, so there's no flow through here. That, I don't think that was actually the problem he was having, but it's not good, and I'm going to suggest to the my boss, or to him, the owner, that we get a new tube for that and put it on. So I guess that's just about it. Back to the shop I go. I hope you all enjoyed this. As always, from Florida, Don out.